JCPSeSchool presents History and Appreciation of the Visual and Performing Arts. I'm your instructor, Ford Smith. Today's lesson, Medieval Drama. Background. The term medieval theater covers nearly 1,000 years from the fall of Rome to the Renaissance, although it should be noted that medieval theater practices continued well beyond the beginnings of the Renaissance. During this period, there were no permanent theaters in use anywhere in Europe, although bands of traveling performers, likely the descendants of Greco-Roman mimes, continued to provide entertainments such as music, song, dance, storytelling, acrobatics, and juggling, mime, and puppetry. In the church, pagan works were considered bad by definition, but questions of their artistic merit still had to be addressed. In a few cases, we find attempts to Christianize Greco-Roman drama. At the end of Euripides' Greek tragedy, the Bacchae, the character Agave grieves deeply over the mangled body of her son, Pentheus. In a short medieval playlet called The Passion of the Christ, we find the same lines spoken by Mary at the foot of Jesus' cross. The German nun Hroswitha took the plot structures of Terence's Roman comedies and used them to write plays with Christian themes. Though the plays were probably not meant to be acted, and no evidence currently exists that these were performed publicly during this period, Hroswitha is generally recognized as the first known female playwright. But it was not until the feudal system began to give way to the growth of towns, travel, and trade that a new tradition of theatrical performance began. Here we have a drawing of a medieval pageant wagon. Liturgical drama. Like the use of the visual arts in church architecture, the use of drama in the church liturgy, a formal group of rites prescribed for public worship, seems to have sprung from the need to educate a population of worshippers who were mostly illiterate and ignorant of Latin, the official language of the Roman Catholic Church. As church services became more elaborate in the 9th century, Gregorian chants were supplemented by other chants, or tropes, many with their own texts. The earliest known trope, around AD 923, is a short conversion into a dialogue of the exchange between the angel and the three Marys at Christ's empty tomb. The opening words in Latin are Quem quaeriturris, whom do you seek, giving the trope its name. Sung as part of the Easter Mass, the trope soon included simple directions given for the four participating clergymen, instructions for stage movement, props, gestures, and specific church vestments to be worn as costumes. In time, more of the resurrection story was dramatized, including scenes not found in Scripture. Likewise, stories surrounding Jesus' birth were enacted during Christmas celebrations. By the year 1000, many dramatic scenes based on scriptural passages had been incorporated into church services. Eventually, these were combined into larger plays, which also included Old Testament material. Gradually, theatrical presentations moved outside the church building, first onto the church steps and eventually into the town centers. Clever stage machines and elaborate special effects were incorporated, and some performances were done in vernacular, everyday languages of the people, rather than the official Latin. In 1311, the spring feast of Corpus Christi was inaugurated and quickly became a favorite occasion for religious dramas. Vernacular religious drama. Around 1350, many clergy began switching from Latin to the languages of the people they served, and church drama followed suit. Once people could understand and participate in the dramas, a 200-year explosion of dramatic activity began. Three major forms of secular religious drama developed: miracle plays, mystery plays, and morality plays. These plays were often presented on festival days in the church calendar as part of large civic ceremonies and pageants. Miracle plays. Miracle plays, also known as saints' plays, were based on the lives of Christian saints, often highlighting the miracles they performed and or their martyrdom. Favorite subjects included the Virgin Mary, St. Nicholas, and St. George. These were usually performed on days in the church calendar set aside to honor the various saints. Mystery plays. Mystery plays were dramatizations of biblical episodes. These plays could be performed alone or in a continuous series of plays known as a cycle. In England, mysteries often ranged from the creation of the world in Genesis to the final judgment in Revelation, whereas in France, they were typically confined to the life of Christ. Passion plays, a subcategory of mystery plays, deal specifically with the last week of Jesus' life on earth. Of the 4 surviving English cycles, the shortest, from the city of Chester, contains 25 individual short plays. The longest, from York, contains 48, and surely took nearly a week to perform. Mystery cycles were usually produced outdoors during the spring or summer, especially during the festival of Corpus Christi. As medieval towns grew and prospered, the theatrical productions became a source of civic pride as well as an expression of religious belief. Authority for the productions passed from church to town councils, and the responsibility for staging the individual plays fell to craft guilds, goldsmiths, carpenters, coopers, etc., and religious confraternites. These groups, organized and monitored by an appointed pageant master, would spend large amounts of money on the physical production of their plays. Actors, mostly amateurs and members of the community, were held to strict standards by the guilds. Sometimes professional actors were hired for leading roles. Morality plays. Morality plays were allegorical representations of the battle for man's soul between the forces of good and evil. An allegory is a narrative, dramatic, or pictorial work whose characters, figures, or events represent abstract ideas or principles. Morality plays were designed to illustrate Christian spiritual principles, showing the rewards of Christian virtue and the perils of sin. The anonymous play Everyman, for example, follows the character Everyman, obviously representing all of humanity, through his last months on earth, ending in his passage through death to his final judgment before the High King of Heaven. The cast includes numerous other symbolic characters such as death, kindred, goods, good deeds, and wisdom. Commonly performed by traveling troupes of professional players during the 15th and 16th centuries, morality plays often included vice characters whose dirty jokes and slapstick business were calculated to amuse a paying audience while still showing the vulgarity of sin. Performance spaces. The visual and technical elements of medieval theater were elaborate and spectacular. Much of the meaning of the plays was shown through colorful emblems, symbolic props, and costumes, because the general population could not read. Costumes, except for the devils, were typically some form of medieval clothing. God, angels, and Jewish priests appeared in church vestments, Roman soldiers in knight's armor, etc. Following conventions of staging and movement established when the plays were performed within the church, a neutral acting area was combined with multiple freestanding scenic structures known as mansions, literally dwellings. Each mansion served as a setting for one or more of the plays. Some communities, especially in France, placed the mansions for that day's plays side by side in a line at the rear of a long plateau, a raised platform. Others arranged them in the round. In England, Spain, and Holland, mansions were often mounted on wagons which traveled like modern parade floats from one designated performance location to another. Special effects were extravagant. Smoke and flames belched from the mouth of hell. Angels flew in clouds platforms, glories, raised angel choirs to the heavens. Characters vanished through traps in the stage, etc. Secular theater. Secular, that is, non-religious theater, also flourished in the courts of emerging monarchs, where professional performers were employed. Folk plays dramatized the adventures of common heroes. Interludes provided entertainments between the courses of banquets, and farces comically depicted human foibles and weaknesses. We can see the influence of these secular forms in the vernacular religious dramas, especially in the folk and farcical elements of the plays. Conclusion. The late medieval period saw the beginnings of the Reformation, and theater again found itself in disfavor, this time with the new Protestant Church. It was outlawed in several countries by the mid-16th century. Nevertheless, the advances in technical theater, the reintroduction of playwriting, and the beginnings of acting as a profession paved the way for the explosion of theater that would occur during the Renaissance.